Wait, there we go. Wait, no, wait. Pre-intro. No one saw that, it's okay. Both of the streams are still only becoming functional, it's fine. Wait, do I have everything muted? Nobody
Hello, fellow philosophers, wannabe politicians, and other like-minded individuals, and welcome back to another episode of the Paradigm Shift podcast. Our intro is evolved.
Uh-huh. How long did you rehearse that for?
I did it once, and then I revised it in my head just now, and I just went with it. And I didn't mess it up terribly, so I am very happy with myself now. Last time we were trying to justify the state. Do you remember this?
I do remember.
I'd hope so. We're finally on schedule.
We're
Within
finally on schedule.
2 weeks. Yeah. Next episode better also be in 2 weeks, or we'll have failed miserably.
We will see.
But hey, it's been like 3-month intervals, and now this next one was in 2 weeks. So clearly, that's progress. That's progress right there. We are in there.
You can call that progress.
We might even get some viewer retention this time.
You can see that evolution. I've got my little avatar down there in the bottom. It's got that.
Hey, hold on. Let me check out the stream. Oh yeah.
Yeah, you see that? You see that? I'm
You're
telling
like
you.
my little brother.
I
love it.
Don't talk to me or my son ever again.
I love it. That's so good. Okay. And you're Light Yagami, of course. Who else?
Yep, of course, that's me.
I love
Actually,
it.
a portrait picture.
All right. And I can see the stream delay is there, but solid. All right. And I've got my notes up, and we're ready to go. Eric, I already briefed you shortly on what we're doing today, but it's going to be fun. Criticizing democracy.
Today we're going to be criticizing democracy.
We've got a lot to criticize. You talked to me about how for your IB entrance exam, you wrote about the rise of right-wing populism.
Ideology, yeah.
Yeah, right-wing ideologies in the modern day. What was that? How it parallels something historical?
It somewhat parallels the a rise of ideals back in the 1920s and so.
Okay, that's interesting. I'm not sure exactly what happened in the 1920s. Like the fascist dictatorships, or
the general rise of fascism is
right.
It's something that might not happen today, but it's I feel like there should be more concern than there is.
But if we take a careful look at history, some of the themes that we have going on right now are similar to how the climate was set up before these fascist dictatorships popped up.
Yeah, everyone always says history repeats itself, but no one ever takes that quote seriously.
Yeah, I take it seriously, I like to think, but I'm not a very good history student at the moment, or at least I haven't studied enough. Can't tell you whether your essay is accurate or not. I'm sure you made some great arguments. But regardless, we're concerned. The people are concerned. Populism is on the rise in Europe and in North America, at least. So what does that mean for democracy? It could be that democracy is not the end-all be-all we hoped it was, and we're actually on our way to something slightly less desirable.
Or it could just mean we're not applying democracy correctly.
That could also be the case. According to Jonathan Wolff, and I am still using the same source, An Introduction to Political Philosophy, the task of according to many people, the task of the political philosopher is done after democracy is in place. But Jonathan Wolff goes on, of course, to talk about what's next. There's so many different kinds of democracy. In fact, we're going to go over some of those tensions today that, you can't just say democracy is bad because things are bad, because we only have one specific kind of democracy.
Democracy bad, fascism good.
What a profound argument.
Upvotes to the left.
I'm really proud. I'm really proud. I've been watching ContraPoints. You were like, did someone say ContraPoints?
I was.
I love ContraPoints.
She's amazing.
Yeah, that's really good. I can give a recommendation, although now all our rightist viewers are going to be like, oh my god, what is this leftist propaganda? No, it's interesting.
Nick, I don't think our shout out matters much to anyone.
No, you gotta pretend. You gotta pretend.
You know what?
I saw Ed Sheeran give his recommendation for okay, I'm into Ed Sheeran nowadays. You can judge me.
Go ahead.
Or if there's anybody there to judge. And he said that if you want to be a musician, you just got to commit and you got to pretend for you got to prepare for years, maybe even, of overnight success. Like you got to pretend next night you're going to become a hit sensation. You got to pretend that you are an amazing musician and you got to keep writing songs every day, going out and doing your stupid gigs in the corners of bars that nobody cares about except you. And eventually, if you believe in yourself, it's going to work out. Sounds like some motivational mumbo jumbo, but
you gotta fake it till you make it.
Yeah, but I mean, it's true. Nobody becomes like nobody goes big without trying.
So
if you don't,
we did it. We hit
You don't-
250,000 subscribers.
if we act like we have 250,000 subscribers, we're gonna get 250,000 subscribers. That's supposed to be how it works, in theory. I guess the point is that you become worth 250,000 subscribers, and eventually people will be like, "Why the heck you are so undersubscribed?" Because you are accounting for an audience that you don't have.
Right, I guess I've seen that around with like channels with like 50,000 subscribers that have like, amazing production quality.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Makes sense. I mean, I'm not gonna go ahead and say that we should up our production value like by €1 billion immediately.
Niki, we need a studio.
Need a studio.
We need a studio.
We need a studio. We need a gang. I'm gonna go out.
We
I'm
need
gonna
staff.
text my friends. No, look, I have friends. We can get an editor. We can get like a film crew and a studio.
Exactly, we need staff.
We can get someone to write music for like the intro.
A composer, yes, perfect.
Yep. We're gonna get like a marketing specialist. Like he's gonna go out and he's gonna go make our social media accounts. We're gonna get that Twitter up finally.
We can
go
pay
out
them.
And get us. Yeah.
We can pay them in stocks of Paradigm Shift podcast.
Yeah, exactly. We can't pay them with anything. We just have to be like, so you can do this for free, but when we do go big, you'll have a share in the comp.
How does one begin how do you apply for a company?
I imagine there's some forms to fill in, and you gotta pay your taxes, and
Shit.
and you need some money. You need some money to start off with, so you can purchase whatever costs you have at the start, which you probably have. I don't know. If you're just like a freelancer, I don't think you need anything. Like you can make deals. Like you can sell your services without necessarily needing to do like a bunch of paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
At least I heard about that person on r/slave labor who was offering dating advice, and then they bought a domain and they essentially started their own business in 3 days. I don't think they were doing many forms. I don't know if you saw this. It was on the front page of Reddit, but yeah.
Did not, no.
Okay.
I feel like we've derailed a little already.
Yep, we're already way off. So let's focus up and get started on this. We're wasting time, right? So that
we're getting comfortable.
Can get we're getting comfortable, and we're waiting for the viewers to roll in. Okay?
We're being personable. We're being likable. We're slowly easing into the subject at hand.
Yes, this is what all the pro streamers do. I've seen them do it. We also need to like minimize the stream so it's in the top left corner and go check on like, the fridge or something. I don't know what they do for maximum professionalism. And what else do we got to do? We got to have our mic muted. Hold on, mute me. No, don't actually.
Yep, we need viewers.
We need viewers. But let's get started. We shortly talked about how things are getting scary a little bit with the political climate.
Tiny little bit.
But it does still seem that the common assumption is that democracy is the best. Right? Democracy is the only form of government that can be justified. Everything else is tyranny.
Yeah, what's that Winston Churchill quote everyone likes. The one that's like, democracy is the
Democracy is
worst
the
system we
worst.
have, except for all the other ones.
Yeah, something like that. Something like that.
Roughly
So
paraphrase.
yeah, that's roughly the popular opinion. So let's see if dictatorship has any benefits to it. But first, a short discussion of what. No, dictatorship has some negative connotations to it, I realize. But Voltaire, for example, argued in favor of a benevolent dictator, benevolent despot, I think. Enlightened despot is the phrase. Yeah, and many thinkers. In fact, we'll get to that in a minute. Like, you'll see that democracy has only recently been accepted as a form of government. So it seems that other forms must have some merit. First of all, Eric, what is a democracy?
It's where people get to vote on things. Where they're like, hey, I want that.
Yeah, that's roughly correct. So it's collective self-rule, right? That's what we think. Everybody comes together, and then they rule themselves together. Everybody has an equal vote, so it's just like a group decision where the majority rules, or does it? We'll see. Have you heard the phrase that democracy is government of the people, by the people, for the people?
I have.
Yeah, when I read it in my book here, I also thought, this sounds familiar. I'm not sure where I heard it. Sounds like something American, but I do think I've heard it somewhere. So this is like one way of thinking of democracy, the sort of definition of the people, by the people, for the people, and what that essentially means by the people. Well, the electorate are the ones making decisions. The people, as a group, are the ones making decisions, not some individual or some outside group. The decisions they make are for the people, so in their own interest. The people govern in their own interests together, and then of the people, which sounds a bit strange because it's like, who else would you be governing? Government of the people? Like, what is the other option? Anarchy? Like, but what that means is that you're only governing yourself. It's government of the people. It's government by the people for themselves, but and only of themselves. So they won't make laws or legislate in a manner that benefits themselves. So it's by the people and for the people, but at the expense of some outside group. So they only rule over themselves. They're not fans of colonialism, for example, I guess. So that's the point. Or at least if you colonize, then those people need to get a vote as well, is the point. So that's like a sort of basic definition of democracy, but again, it's not the end all be all. So there are so many arguments over what kind of democracy is the best one. First of all, I'd like to again stress the fact that democracy is nowadays used more as a word of praise and as a litmus test of what regimes are legitimate and what isn't, than in some legitimate debate over whether good or not. It's just assumed as good.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those names with a lot of power, Like you see that a lot in politics, like socialism, whether in positive or negative context, still has that sort of negative connotation to a lot of people.
It's a buzzword.
Yeah, democracy is like the opposite of that. No matter what context you put it in, it sounds good.
And that's what you see, right? You see, like North Korea naming itself the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, or because it makes them look better, even if we don't really think of them as particularly democratic, really, with their Kim Jong-un over there. Or you look at the split of West Germany and East Germany after World War II. East Germany claim the word democratic for themselves. Like, okay, we're the German Democratic Republic, and then West Germany has to settle for German Federal Republic. German Federal Republic rather than German Democratic Republic. Even to every Western commentator, it seems that they are far more democratic than the Soviets.
Exactly.
Right?
You can just call yourself democratic and your relationship points go up.
It's good publicity.
It's good. Yeah, it's good PR.
Yeah. So they're advertising themselves as good, and that's what they want for obvious reasons. So that's some basic international relations for you. Put democratic in the name of your state, even if you're not Don't know if anybody here is starting a state.
If there are any aspirants here.
Yeah, Eric, I came up with a target audience.
Oh my
we gotta cater to all those people trying to figure out the fundamentals of political philosophy so they can start their own state. There have to be so many of those people out there. We could make a business out of this.
There are dozens of us. Dozens.
Millions.
Dozens.
Okay, probably maybe dozens. I'd be surprised if you could find 100 people who are actively trying to start their own state. Or I don't know.
100 people? I mean,
no, you got your micronations out there.
I mean, yeah.
People trying to claim their own little spot of land or out in the ocean. There could be more. But it's besides the point again. So we assume democracy to be so good, and we hold that word in such esteem currently. But historically, it was pretty much unknown until the UK in the 14th century, but even then they were still primarily a monarchy, and in the US. So I think I looked up a list at some point of the oldest democracies, and pretty much after ancient Greece and the Roman Republic, which were both in the BCs before the supposed birth of Jesus Christ.
Wow, supposed?
Before the birth of Jesus Christ.
That's more like it.
Historians seem to agree he existed, so since that there was in 900 AD-ish, you had Isle of Man and Icelandic democracies, and that's pretty much it. The tiniest places you could imagine have some random democracies.
Who cares about
Iceland? 1,000 years after the Roman, and then it's only another 400 years later that the UK starts experimenting with Parliament. But really, the king still has all the power, and then it's only another 400 years after that, slightly less, that you have the American Revolution, and they have their they set up their democratic state. Yeah. Washington's presidents, right?
Exactly. I mean, who cares about Iceland? They're named after cold water.
Oh, right, I see. I was thinking cold water. I was thinking ice for cold, land for water. Wait, that doesn't add up. Okay. High IQ discourse over here.
Water? Okay. You mean earth juice?
Where's that from? I feel like you've referenced.
I feel like I've seen that on Twitter somewhere.
Maybe. Sounds like a meme about those natural. Oh, I don't know. What do you call the people who are anti-vaxxers and into all these natural cures and stuff?
Right, homeopaths.
Homeopaths? Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like a meme about that.
No, I feel like it's more just about the abstractness of it, the obscurity of water. You mean earth juice? It's abstract. It's that's what most humor is nowadays on the internet.
Okay, sure. I don't understand modern humor, I guess. I'm just too old.
Boomer.
Yeah, sure. So, if we have this kind of history with democracy, getting back to the subject at hand, where so many thinkers have looked at it and dismissed it, including but not limited to Voltaire, as mentioned previously, and Plato, who we'll talk about more later, but also sort of everybody in between in that 1,400-year continuum. It seems that maybe alternative arrangements have some merit. So you shouldn't just assume that democracy is good, because people have rejected it for centuries. So must be something to other options. and you got to look at it with some honest. You got to honestly inspect the benefits and the harms of democracy,
Niki,
and yeah.
are you actually considering acknowledging the existence of the Dark Ages? I mean, everyone knows history was just like the Greeks, then the Romans, and then the Renaissance happened.
No, I'm talking about that in that age, there was no. Oh, I see what you're saying. Are you saying that because it was so bad in that time period?
No, I'm saying it's just like such a neglected area of history, really.
Okay, the Dark Ages.
Just
they were
generally
only
the
dark in
gap
Europe,
between,
and it was a very short amount of time.
I just generally mean the gap between the Romans and Renaissance.
Yeah, well, it's not all Dark Ages, if that's what you're
No.
insinuating. You're saying the Dark Ages was a very short period of that. It was like, what was it? Some early Middle Ages, late Middle Ages? I don't remember. And it was only dark in Europe.
Middle Ages is the one I was looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
yes, continue. Back to the subject at hand. Drink every time they say that.
Take a shot. Hold on, I've got water. No, sorry. Vodka. Yeah, I'm drinking vodka from this glass.
Look at this man staying hydrated.
Yeah, it's hot outside, dude. It's like a heat wave out here, but I'm hiding indoors. Democracy. So now that we have an understanding of what democracy is, and maybe we're going to exercise some intellectual honesty and not just assume it's good, let's look at what sort of arguments and tensions there are within democratic theory, just really quickly. Actually, didn't expect us to waste this much time before getting to this as setup, but we really got off topic.
Call it waste, I call it entertainment. Yes?
All right, yes, it's entertainment value. People will be so entertained with this 2 hour video. They're going to be like, oh, this is where I'm going to go for my quality entertainment.
Continue.
Firstly, majority rule versus consideration for individual. What that means is that in democracy, it's essentially a system of majority rule, even though it passes itself off as a collective self-rule. It's a system of majority rule. And just as with dictatorships or aristocracies / oligarchies in the past, the people who have the power can totally oppress the people who aren't in power. So in the past, we see dictatorships where corrupt leaders gain all the wealth and the people suffer. There is such a thing as the tyranny of the majority, coined by de Tocqueville in the 19th century, is that phrase, tyranny of the majority, and you might have heard it before, that in a democracy, if most people want a thing that hurts only a small group of people, then that small group of people can be real hurt. There's nothing to stop that from happening. Sort of where constitutional democracies come in and like rights and stuff. But even in the modern world, it happens. You see with these nationalist parties.
I feel like you definitely see it a lot in like really like modern communities recently. Just like oppression against marginalized groups is enabled under democracy.
Yeah. I mean, and that's where populist rhetoric comes in, right? You gain the people, most people on your side, and then you can totally advance your interests at the expense of the remaining people. That's why populism is so worrying, because it stands for.
I believe they call them undesirables.
Undesirables? Sure. Whatever you want to call them. Whatever sounds least questionable. I'm pretty sure ContraPoint has talked about this. Back in the day, we just used racist language, but now we can't use racist language, so we just have like these.
Yeah, I'm sort of trying
dog whistle politics, I think.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to refer to like dehumanization as a tactic.
Dehumanization? Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's definitely an aspect. So, tyranny of the majority versus, well, majority rule, and then how much should we give consideration to individuals? This was promoted by It's called the Madisonian view, that democracy requires the protection of minorities, named after James Madison, who I'm sure you know from, at the very least,
Yes.
Hamilton. Hamilton the musical. So the democratic theorist has to decide how many constitutional rights, how many constitutional unnegotiable rights and privileges do we give to people that democracy can't touch, and how much is democracy just majority rule? Like, if most people want it, then like in Finland, I mean, I don't know about the exact workings of other systems, but in Finland, for example, the constitution can be amended. Like, I'm sure in most countries, the way it works here specifically is that instead of it's not enough for one parliament to pass a bill that changes the constitution itself. They have to have the following parliament to do it as well, and then it might even have a limit on how large the majority needs to be. I don't remember if it has to be 2/3 in that case, but
Right.
at the
Yeah.
very least, it's like one parliament does it, and then the next session after the following elections also has to approve it. So it's like a bit of a buffer.
Yeah. 2/3 is common for a lot of things that fall under
Yeah.
heavy topics.
Yeah, like simple majority, but then sometimes you need 2/3. Like, I don't know. The Well, this was one example of them. I just don't remember the word. What is it that they want to happen to Donald Trump?
Impeached. That's 2/3.
Impeachment.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Impeachment
two
requires
thirds.
2/3 majority.
I can't believe I just forgot that word. How embarrassing. No, it doesn't matter. So sometimes that happens. So, like, how Madisonian do we want to be? Every democratic theorist is going to have to deal with that. Then another one is representative versus direct democracy. All modern democracies are representative, but back in ancient Greece, it was pretty much direct democracy. All the people gather at popular assemblies, and by all the people, I mean those with the right to do so, gather at popular assemblies to make the decisions. Um, so some very critical some people very critical of representative democracy say that democracy would be great if we had it. They think that we don't have democracy. This is not genuine democracy. I don't know of the exact arguments relating to that question, but I'm sure it's something a political philosopher can spend his life work on.
Right. I can
Maybe
feel
not.
that.
Yeah. And so those are two very big issues, and then some minor ones we definitely know of. I mean, okay, I've written down a funny one. The Greeks thought that voting was undemocratic because the unpopular get a less than equal chance, so they used lottery. So that's interesting. Okay, is voting desirable or is a lottery better? I don't.
I don't know, but I know which one sounds more entertaining.
So do I. Make me king. Another point is some modern philosophers have argued that strength of preference should be taken into account. That somehow we should devise a method to account for how strong your preference is on the matter. And this is essentially just to say that two people currently have the same vote, right? So
Right.
so even if you are generally apathetic about the whole thing, like, should we build this road or not? But the other guy is like, if they build this road, I will lose my house and die. Then
Oh
it's
Lord.
sort of, yeah, they think it's
Yeah. So
nonsensical that you have the same vote. They think it's more logical that the person with the stronger preference has a greater weight
okay,
in the matter because
I
they
was
have more at stake.
yeah, I was thinking you meant more just like vote your preference from 1 to 5.
I mean, that could be one way of measuring it. I mean, that's one idea. Like, if you're, but people could take advantage of that. Obviously,
Yeah, of
like, then
course.
nobody would circle like the 1 or 2
No one would go
and
for
admit
like
that.
no one would go 2 or 4 or 3.
Yeah,
Especially
no,
3.
nobody.
No one would go to abstain.
Yeah, yeah, they're not going to be like, I'm pretty apathetic about the whole thing, and then pretty much make their vote pointless. I mean, everybody's going to think that their vote is the right one. So.
I mean, I guess that
But
would be like a thing if you had mandatory voting, but mandatory voting is like a big no-no.
yeah, well, we can also discuss that at some point. I generally don't mind people abstaining who don't consider themselves educated on the matter.
Yeah, of course.
But I think that it's highly desirable that everybody educates themselves. Like it's the next best thing after being educated and voting is just abstaining. The worst thing, of course, is to vote while you don't know what you're doing. Succumbing to some politicians' convincing rhetoric, for example. Highly undesirable. So that's one maybe interesting thing that you can discuss if you've already determined that democracy is the best system. Should we take into account people's strength of preferences? I mean, it made sense to you too, right? Like that if it doesn't hurt me either way if this decision is made, so I don't really care. But I guess I'll pick this one because I like it marginally better, and then the other person stands to lose a lot. Then why is it that our vote is worth the same? You know?
Yeah.
So it's like in general, like if you imagine that you're out with a group of friends and you have to choose a place to eat, for example, one person is going to be like, "How about McDonald's?" And another person is going to be like, "No, I can't eat fast food." And another person is going to be like, "Well, I don't mind either way because even if they personally would like a Taco Bell, I don't know, then they just want to get to some decision that is good enough for him that the others will also like, right?"
Right.
So they're going to go with that apathetic route, sort of, where it doesn't make as much a difference to me. So to let the people who it does make a difference to decide, just out of common courtesy, it makes sense.
It does
So
make sense.
that's something I'd be happy to explore in the future, but sounds like a really niche topic.
It sounds complicated to establish as well.
Yeah, very difficult to establish. I mean, at the point when the theorists are saying we need to devise methods rather than saying we need to implement methods, you know that there's going to be problems. Because clearly they have no methods.
I mean,
okay.
Yeah, I feel like this is something very individual. Like, you have to go through each person again, and like, I feel like there's a lot of space for exploitation again.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough, generally speaking. But it's interesting thought anyway. Another thing people debate about is voting, right? In the past, of course, ancient Greece, we say, oh yeah, so democratic, but only the men who had been in whose whole family ancestry lineage synonyms could be traced back to the same city, Athens. Only the men who were purely Athenian in
Yep,
that sense had the
pure-blooded
right to
men.
vote. Pure-blooded men. Women and slaves, nah. And then like South Africa, when apartheid was overturned or whatever, and black people got to vote. I mean, black people didn't used to get to vote in many places. Even nowadays, we have questions about voting rights. In the case of prisoners, in the case of the youth, should we move the voting age down to like 16 years old? Sometimes these debates.
I have a brilliant solution, by the way.
What?
For the special weighing. You see, what we do is we establish a social credit system. No.
What? Oh, so I think I've heard of this, but I'm not sure. Is that like if you
The one they
act
have in
in
China. Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah, I've heard of that. See, I haven't studied it, so I don't know. But it's like you have to pretty much play along if you want to get a vote.
It's
and
very
such.
dystopian, yes. The social
Yes.
credit system is like in China. It's like if it's too low, you can't get plane or like train tickets.
Oh yeah, you can't be trusted to leave the country. Yeah. I get you. I remember this. The regime doesn't trust you. Yeah,
It's a bit
scary stuff.
Nothing happened on June 4th, 1989 in Tiananmen Square.
Yeah, absolutely nothing.
Absolutely nothing.
What an awfully specific date to choose.
I know, right?
Equally nothing happened on June 5th.
Yeah, exactly. Please give me my tickets back, please. I just want to see my family.
Oh no. Yeah, we got problems now in the world. Let's continue talking about democracy. The last point here I've written down is proportional representation versus first past the post system. So countries like Finland, EU elections, we use proportional representation. So roughly, if a party gets a certain percentage of the votes, then they will get that roughly, quite accurately, that same percentage of the seats. But in like the UK general elections, in like the US because of their
Electoral college.
the electoral college, they don't have a proportional representation of the people in their representative democracy. So you have situations where you lose the popular vote but win the president's. Cough, cough.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's because, the forums like the electoral college, they really like, they empower rural areas with like less population because like, California has like a much larger populace than, let's say, Vermont.
Yeah.
But, because of that, like California gets like, I don't know how much, like 50 electoral college representatives, while Vermont gets 36. Something like that is the scale, basically.
I get you. It's sort of the same thing in the UK with counties. So like they have like these individual counties, and then the winner of that county gets the seat.
It's like a less
it gives rise to strategic voting.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a less subtle version of gerrymandering.
And problems where one county has greater population than another and such, and then still doesn't get more seats and whatnot.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly. It's like a less subtle version of gerrymandering, except everyone's like, well, it's always been like that.
Yeah. Well, it's always been like that. Rather than, well, gerrymandering isn't that like trying to make like change borders?
Yeah, change borders around so you can get like inaccurately representative like voting counts. It's like you can have 60 like.
So it's sort of the opposite.
Yeah, you can have 60 red voters and 40 blue voters, but if you draw the borders right, you can get 2 districts that vote blue and 1 district that votes red.
Yeah, gotcha. So ridiculous, obviously. But I should mention it's sometimes said that Hitler would never have come to power if it weren't that the German system used proportional representation. That's one sort of ad hominem-esque attack, often leveled.
I must pull my secret trump card. Hitler.
Yep. Clearly, proportional representation is bad because it allowed Hitler to be elected. Like, I mean, obviously, if in any democracy that can happen, then it can well be that the democracy is flawed. So that's maybe one argument that we can use here during our critique, but it's really not the most convincing one.
Are you saying Hitler good? Checkmate.
Checkmate. These neoliberal
got them neoliberal cultural Marxist soy cucks.
Yeah, we're starting to sound really really biased at this point. Let's focus up, Eric. We're critiquing democracy. How can we be biased? Nobody critiques democracy nowadays.
Yeah, exactly. This is the least biased thing you could do.
So let's look at what we could do instead of democracy. You've heard of Plato? We've talked about Plato.
I like that guy.
Yeah, cool dude. He had some writings that he wrote.
I'm sure you've heard of them.
Including the Republic. I've read some of them. Wow, look at me. Legit philosopher right here. Read his Plato. I didn't read the Republic. I only read 3 of his smaller works, but I'm working on it, okay? I'm working on it. So in the Republic, Plato makes an argument against democracy because he's not a fan of democracy.
Reasonable.
So he uses an analogy as a sort of rhetorical device here. It's called the craft analogy. And he pretty much paints this scene of a boat ruled by a mob, pretty much. Like the captain is elected by the mob, and there are different factions trying to persuade others to join them and persuade the captain to follow their lead, and etc. And essentially, it's all really bad because the ship never gets where it wants to go because sailing is a skill, obviously. And when you just have a mob ruling the idea is that then because they don't know how to sail, experts go ignored, whilst the people, the skilled orators and speakers, win, and it turns into a drunken pleasure cruise with no destination.
You definitely don't see that nowadays.
No.
No.
That's not at all
what
things
even
are
is
going.
a political science?
I don't know. I think it has something to do with law and countries. Yeah.
That one. Yeah.
Yeah. You look at countries and then you go that good, and then you look at another one and you go that bad.
Exactly.
I've done my research.
This is the type of political nuance I expect.
But if you want to get more specific, Aristotle had the first political scientist. He sent his students around to research the neighboring countries to find out what is the best form of government. Do you remember this from when we were discussing Aristotle? Potentially not, but yes, that's good. See how educated we are thanks to this podcast? We can talk about the birth of political science. Yeah. So this is Plato's basic argument, essentially. So the whole analogy is just a rhetorical device, because he even uses like this peculiarity with the word democracy. So like with other words, like a monarchy, which means the rule of the monarch. Democracy means the rule of the people.
Demon?
Demos, actually.
Yes.
Yes. Which can be translated as the people, or it can be translated as mob. So he shows like this unruly mob, displays democracy as mob rule, which of course is just a rhetorical trick. But the main argument is that ruling is a skill, and a skill that can only be attained by the few. So democracy is plainly absurd, because if the people are allowed to rule, then they will be swayed by those who speak loudest and with most conviction. They will be swayed by invalid arguments and due to their own simple lack of education, really. So that's his argument. But what's his alternative then? Where are his expert rulers? Have you heard of Plato's philosopher kings?
I have not.
You have not? Okay, exciting. Yeah, so Plato, quite flatteringly to his target audience, probably, was like, the only way we can properly rule the state is if the philosophers become kings and the kings become philosophers. So essentially what he's saying is that philosophy is like a necessary skill to rule, which is quite bold. But the point is present, right? You need to be educated deeply on the subject matter. You need to... You can't be a king out of birthright. You need to be a king because you are an expert on ruling, and you deserve that through your philosophical education.
Like, leadership is obviously a skill.
Yes.
It is both a skill and a character trait, and I feel like, we've seen people who represent leadership, and we've seen people who definitely do not. I feel like he's on the right track there.
He's on the right track. If you think about it, I mean, think about the typical politician. Okay, some of them, we think, at least, are just populist. They're just trying to appeal to the masses, and they're not actually that qualified. But the reality is, and definitely the ideal is, like, we can't, like, okay, the fact that we have this problem in politics could be a result of our democracy, right? In an alternative system, we could have actual experts ruling the country, and this is a result of democracy that we don't have experts ruling the country. But you definitely can't deny that there are skills required to rule, right? You need to have a very nuanced understanding of economics, like government, society, leadership, as you mentioned, even like human motivation and psychology.
Right.
You probably need to have a reasonably high IQ. I don't know.
Yeah, and
I mean, you definitely can't be an idiot, because there's a lot of factors to take into account.
Yep, you totally can't be an idiot. Right, but I feel like, that's exactly where the concern comes in. It's like, do those skills and the skills of like being popular and getting the popular vote overlap? You know, it's like can the
Right.
expert shine in a democracy, which is
Exactly.
what Plato was saying, I feel. And
Yeah, Plato, of course, was essentially arguing that they'll go ignore, that the real experts, that nobody will believe the real experts. If you don't understand anything of ruling a ship, of sailing a ship, then he uses this analogy of how people wouldn't possibly be able to believe this man who claims that he can guide them by looking at the stars.
yeah,
Right.
and I
They're
feel
just
like
gonna ignore that, and he'll never get a chance to prove himself.
and I'm really afraid of this becoming like a modern trend nowadays, because like during somewhere around 2017, 2018, people like Oprah and Dwayne the Rock Johnson were saying that they might run for president,
Fascinating.
which is like,
Yeah,
probably
you're
don't.
popular.
Probably
You're
don't.
pop. You're popular, but you're not an expert on politics. So if that popularity gets you into a position, whilst you're actually in reality highly incompetent, then that's a problem. Luckily, I don't think we've seen that. I mean, I know Arnold Schwarzenegger is like in
The
politics in
governor.
like. Yeah, he's like a governor of some random city in
I think it
California
was
or something. I don't know.
I don't
Is
know.
that
I think it
right?
was like the government. I think it was like the governor of Arizona, I want to say.
Arizona, maybe? Yeah, I don't know. But I don't know about him. I don't know if he was qualified or not, so won't comment on that further.
He's definitely not a dumb man, but I don't know if he was like, office qualified.
Got a good accent.
But I guess that's like I guess that doesn't even matter that much nowadays to people.
Yeah. Well, that's the problem, right? That's the problem. If being office qualified doesn't matter, but being office qualified is clearly an advantage, then we've got a serious instrumental deficit going on.
Hmm.
So so Plato has this whole plan for how he's going to raise these experts, right? So in the Republic, he details like, okay, we're going to identify young people, potential candidates at a young age, and then through a series of tests. I don't know the exact details. I'm sure it would be a real pain to go through. Through a series of tests, we're going to determine which ones have the most potential, and then we're going to bring them through for a life of training. So, for in their early years, of course, like literacy, music, military and physical education. And then they only start studying philosophy at the age of 30. So it's like philosophy is clearly only for the wise men. I guess. I don't know why he only starts at 30, but yeah, at age 30, they study 5 years of philosophy. And then after that, they have 15 years of mandatory military service. And then after that, they can turn permanently to philosophy. So at the age of what, 50? Except those who are chosen to take their turn at rule. So you just have a bunch of supposed experts that have been carefully nurtured to be the perfect rulers. You have this
Right.
class of them, and then they're I guess somehow you're gonna appoint one of them to be the ruler, and then that man will appoint the next one eventually, maybe when he feels that he's no longer fit to rule. I don't know. It's dictatorship, so he probably decides.
I wonder how many promising kids you have to start with, considering like the average lifespan and mortality rate at the time.
Yeah, and the whole military service part is like, what?
Yeah, especially with
I mean,
15
from
years
a
of
modern
military.
point of view, 15, yeah. From a
Yeah,
modern point of view, we don't really understand.
and
What
we're
does this have to
talking
do with
like
ruling?
we're talking Greek military service, so we mean actual like war.
Yeah. Yeah, nowadays, I mean, it could still be feasible because I mean, I don't know what the benefits are. You become disciplined
Hardened, disciplined, yeah.
and hardened
Haha.
and yeah. Whatever that means, that's clearly a benefit somehow. Yeah, I don't know. I guess leadership skills
Could be.
could be they're trained as officers, maybe. I don't know.
Eh.
I don't know. I'm trying to read sense into Plato here. Yeah, so this is his whole plan, like, for how we're gonna raise these expert rulers. And essentially the whole point of the argument is If ruling is a skill that can only be attained by the few, democracy is absurd. So do we accept Plato's alternative? Does that sound cool?
I feel like it could be more nuanced than that, you know? I feel
I
like it
do
could
too.
be a bit more, you know. I feel like you could take a smarter stab at it than like we're gonna pick a bunch of kids, okay, and we're gonna teach them. Then we're
It's like
gonna
the
send them out to die, and then they can be rulers.
Yeah, it's like Star Wars. It's like we're gonna find the people with the midichlorians, okay, and then we're gonna raise them. We're gonna indoctrinate them from 4 years old. Of course there are many problems. I mean, you're gonna have a lot of questions, and which I'm sure he answers to some extent, like who does the training? Probably other philosophers who have already undergone the training, and then it's only the first people that are gonna be tough. I don't know. But you're gonna have a lot of questions,
Hmm.
and there's probably going to be a lot of optimization available. But
Yeah.
let's see if we can determine if, from a more general standpoint, this has potential. Maybe some variant of it is better, but maybe, it has potential. So he calls these philosopher kings guardians. And let's look at what objections you might have with Plato's guardianship program. First of all, somebody might say, all right, I'm going to throw in some examples here. Actually, if you have any ideas already for what problems we have with these guardians, I mean, maybe even a general argument against dictatorship, if you can think of any, then you can go first, or then I can go, and if you get any ideas, you can.
I don't know, man. Dictatorship sounds fine to me.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I think we're done here. We finished critiquing democracy. Democracy bad, dictatorship good.
Hitler good.
Let's end the stream. Okay.
Hitler
No.
good. Snowman. I
No.
didn't expect to come to this conclusion, but here we are.
This is just the result of being unbiased and taking every
I don't know.
viewpoint.
I don't know, man. All signs lead to Hitler.
It's intellectual honesty. I mean, we just have to accept that Hitler is good.
Yeah, exactly. We went through the logical arguments, and at the end,
Hitler good.
boom, fascism.
And if anybody thinks otherwise, they just haven't gone through the logical arguments. They're blinded.
Exactly. You're blinded by bias. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Jinx.
go ahead.
Yeah, I'll go ahead. So here are some objections that someone might level against guardianship. I think some of these I even adapted to be my own, okay? Because I had some interesting footnotes that I scribbled into the margins of this book, right? Because I had a lot of comments. So, but firstly, experts don't generally have the force of law. Like, imagine if doctors' orders were binding. Like, doctors, yeah, they're experts, and we wouldn't turn to a mob to give us advice on what we're gonna what we're gonna do for medical advice.
I don't know. Again, that sounds entertaining.
It does sound entertaining. All right, take 100 people and then have them vote how we're gonna heal this broken leg.
Let's make a Facebook post with like a poll.
Yeah.
I mean,
oh dear. Should I vaccinate my children? Yes or no?
Yeah, exactly. That's basically the anti-vax movement, isn't it?
To some extent, I'm sure. I mean, you just have these communities and echo chambers. Yeah, I don't trust them. I don't trust them.
They're paid off by Pig Pharma. Every single one of them is somehow keeping this massive global secret.
Yeah. Okay, but to some extent, there's a point there. Essentially, that experts may be quite good at their craft, but they're also good at, quote, feathering their own nests. So if you go to an expert, oftentimes their honest advice is also going to be their businesses, what's best for their business. They're going to give you their sales pitch, etc. Exactly. So the point is that corruption is a totally potential problem, right? Like money can get in the way. So I'm sure you might have heard this phrase before in different contexts, but here's the origin of it. Who guards the guardians?
Who watches the watchmen?
Exactly. So that's a very general argument against dictatorship is that power corrupts. Somebody needs to be holding you accountable, and when you're not, this person is very likely, or at least eventually someone will, start making decisions that are blinded by potential wealth. Like, you see it all the time. Why did the French Revolution happen? Because the monarchy was an arse, and so was the nobility and the clergy, for that matter.
That's one way to put it.
So that's a basic argument against dictatorship, is how are you gonna make sure that these guardians don't turn corrupt? We give them absolute power. How do you know that they're gonna make good decisions with that power and not decisions that benefit themselves? Luckily, Plato's very complex guardianship program has an answer.
Uh-oh.
Do you know how he's gonna, or do you have an idea of how he would prevent corruption with these philosopher kings?
No, I cannot figure it out right now.
All right. Well, his idea is essentially that we're gonna prevent the cause of corruption. In other words, guardians won't be allowed to own private property.
Ah.
Yeah. So that seems to get rid of the motivation for most corruption,
That
essentially.
also seems to get rid of the motivation of most expertise.
Mm-hmm. Very clever. You see, the next argument is, then why would they want to rule? All right, so okay, we've got your expert ruler. Firstly, why would he's not going to be very motivated to become this expert ruler you're training him to be if his future is having no property.
Yeah,
Secondly, when he is in that position, what's his motive? Like, yeah, I don't know. What's his motivation to actually take that role responsibly if you're just gonna take everything away from him?
Yeah, I mean, some people just have it in their heart to to serve for their country and everything, but those types of people are very few and far between.
Mm-hmm. So it could be a serious objection. Of course, we can mitigate its impact quite significantly by pointing out that there's a very clear motivation that somebody who's undergone this nurture, or why somebody who's undergone this nurture and philosophical change would want to give up private property and take up such a burden as ruling the whole nation, which is that the alternative is somebody else has to do it. And an educated, intelligent person who recognizes that the alternative is being ruled by an incompetent is the idea is that they will voluntarily take that man. Like, they'll carry that burden simply because they have to, and the alternative is probably everything's gonna go to hell, and my life is gonna be terrible anyway because stupid people will be ruling.
Right. Okay. So I kind of feel that, but I still feel like this is a very extreme dip in quality of life. If you were
Yeah,
to
well,
go down
private
this route.
property, I assume that there's some kind of public property that they have, right? Like they're given like a certain area, and then it's just, this is all you get. Like, you live in this place, and you get this food, and it's non-negotiable. Probably there's like, you don't get anything like of your own. This is just like general communal stuff that every philosopher king will. So you don't have a motivation to be corrupt, I guess, is the point. So it's not gonna be bad. It's just you're not gonna be able to make it any better, and it's not gonna be so good that you'd want to get into the role of leader. Like, you'd fake it till you make it just for the purpose of getting the wealth, because it's not gonna be that wealthy. I
Right.
mean, we sort of have a similar situation nowadays. I'm not a big fan of the Finns party in Finland in general, because they are an example of one of those populist nationalist parties we've been talking about. But one of their candidates made a YouTube video that I watched that talked about the benefits that members of parliament, and it was completely outrageous. So if the government continues to pay politicians so absurdly well with so absurd benefits that they take advantage of, it does create an avenue for corruption. So, like, I get that there needs to be an incentive, but it also can't be that big an incentive. So, okay, probably some people won't want to give up private property to be able to be the ruler, but we have an alternative motivation that mitigates the impact of that. So, maybe a more obvious objection. Let's say, Eric, that you
Yes.
have just been made the dictator of this here country.
That was a
Or whatever
horrible
country you want.
decision. Put me back.
But no, okay, well, just okay. Pretend that you're gonna accept it, and
Okay.
you're very unhappy with the fact they've taken away your private property. So what are you gonna do as dictator?
Well, first act of rule, give my stuff back.
Exactly. So this is the more powerful objection. Can't
Right.
the Guardian change the laws relating to private property? Who is gonna stop them? We're gonna have some constitution that he can't change? What if he changes it? Who they're gonna send the military in, and then he has to, like, he can just be like, no, turn around, go back. He's the dictator.
Either you have some sort of like rigid constitution that you will always have to accept as flawed permanently, or you have this problem.
Yep. So these dictators can totally still be corrupt because they can just change the rules. So what would Plato say to that? Well, I'm not aware if he has any idea of some rigid constitution, some idea of like a sect of or like some sector of the country, like, or I don't know, some organization, right? That's job is to guard the Guardian, to like enforce the Constitution. But I mean, even if such a thing were to be, I mean, we can see countless problems with it. I mean, first act of rule, get rid of that organization.
Or, if they aren't given that power,
appoint
somehow.
Different people in that organization.
Yeah, exactly. Or just like first act of rule. Hey, those guardians I have. If you let me do stuff, I can really have you live it up.
Oh yeah, true. I can really. Oh hey, guardian. I could really hook you up. Yeah, I can hook you up. You want?
If you just look the other way.
I'll give you 5 kilograms for $3. I don't know. Okay.
I'll give you 5 horses if you let me become benevolent dictator of all time.
Yep. So that's a problem. And at this point we don't have quite as powerful a comeback. We can't. At this point, the only response that we can really have as anti-democrat is that, well, you see, the philosophical training and just the sort of nurture that these guys undergo makes them very resistant to temptation, which is not really convincing.
It's not very reliable, is it?
It's not very reliable. Like, we can see that it's plausible, right? That somebody, if raised to be a virtuous citizen, raised to be a public servant, study philosophy and all that stuff, he's going to have some strong morals and he's going to be very resistant to temptation. But there's just going to be that one dude who slips through the cracks and has like a half a brain cell.
Even if you have even if you have a super highly vetted process, it takes one guy.
Yeah, and that's the problem. So I don't think there's a very powerful response against that. So that will leave us with, I mean, first of all, what Jonathan Wolff says is that we can respond to these people that claim that the philosophical education will make them resistant to temptation, that full and proper scrutiny, and this is a quote now, quote, full and proper scrutiny in front of an empowered electorate is a far more reliable remedy, unquote. Which I did not consider a very, very powerful counter response either, but to be fair, he didn't really need to make much of a response at that point. Like, we can see that it's not really satisfactory to just say that they're philosophers, so they won't be tempted. It's just like an additional side note that, well, in a democracy, if you undergo corruption, there's an insect flying around here, and it's really bugging
I saw
me.
it I saw it fly directly past the camera earlier.
So annoying. Go away. But regardless. Oh,
there it is again.
You did it again. Yeah. So it's just a side note that in a democracy, you have a empowered electorate actively scrutinizing you. So there's much less temptation, which could be one advantage of democracy. But of course, to that particular response, I would say that, yeah, but if the philosophical nurture is still a sufficient remedy, even if the scrutiny of an empowered electorate is a more reliable remedy, if philosophical nurture is still sufficient, then that doesn't matter much. It's just a minor advantage of democracy, which is in the end insubstantial if no single person can actually outperform the nurture that they have undergone. Like, I mean, okay, we say that, like your genetics, what is it? Nature and nurture are the two things that form a person. And if with the correct nurture, it's feasible that somebody can be properly trained into functionally resisting temptation. I don't know how likely it is, but it seems feasible. So again, like half a point to the Democrats, I think.
But yeah, it's like again, it just it relies on like an assumption that like they're trained, they won't abuse that power, and also I feel like again, even if they're trained to resist temptation, it's very hard to resist temptation when there's no payout whatsoever, really.
They're philosophers.
Well, you can't just
their
say
payout is happiness.
No, you can't just say
their payout is happiness. They've been trained in like ethics, so they understand the morality. And they understand that what the correct moral action is, and as a result of that, they won't go against the moral action because that would cause them great displeasure and unhappiness.
Bruh.
I'd have no confidence in that argument. I think, but I'm still not going to give the Democrats the full point. I think they get half the points. Do you disagree?
Sure.
It seems plausible.
Half a point to democracy.
Plausible. Half a point to democracy. In the end, after those few objections that we pointed out, it does seem that even if Plato's system makes us a bit uncomfortable, like there are some flaws here and there that could become an issue, it doesn't seem yet out of the question that an alternative system would. That these problems can be fixed somehow. Like I don't know what that would be. It would have to somehow again be this like rigid constitution and guardians and whatnot. But I don't know if any of that can be made to work. But these are only minor objections, and they don't really prove that democracy is better, considering all the problems that we've already listed with democracy. So we are left at an impasse. Perhaps we can try to see if there's another direction we can take the democratic argument. You still here?
I'm still here.
You're still here. You were very quiet.
Yes, I was contemplating.
That's good. You're well on your way to becoming a philosophy thinking champion. Bad reference.
It's me.
Let's ignore that.
Thinking champion. Hello, welcome back to my channel, Philosophy Thinking Champion.
I want to hold some philosophy thinking competition so we can find the philosophy thinking champion. My throat is really sore. All right, let's go. I'm talking too much again. Hold on, more water.
Aha.
I'm gonna need to upgrade soon to like a mug of tea plus a cup of water or something. Yeah, we've already been going for over an hour. Let's keep the ball rolling. We don't have much more to go. Because this is only part one essentially. Next time we're defending democracy. I think we mentioned this already. I don't know. Well, if we didn't, viewers, if there are any of you out there that have made it this far, next time we'll be defending democracy. So it's not all bad. We're being unbiased, right? We're observing both sides of the arguments. Okay. So,
if you've made it this far into the video, I legally owe you a $50 gift card. You can hold me legally accountable to that.
Wow. That's a bold claim.
I sure hope we never get popular.
One day, just 10 years from now, you're gonna be bombarded by comments or like
just
personal
mail.
Yep, mail. Yeah, like just people, lawsuits. I don't know.
Lawsuits, debt collectors, whatever.
Everybody's calling their lawyers right now.
I don't think
we actually take this man seriously?
I don't think you can make a verbal contract like this.
No, I don't think you can. That's not a thing. Not in this context, anyway.
No.
So back to democracy. Very important topic. Let's not get derailed. And I'm still getting annoyed by this fly. So, okay, we're a bit uncomfortable with Plato's system. What else can we say? Perhaps there's some more rigid defense of democracy available. Consider the following, Eric, okay? Perhaps there's no advantage to having a dictatorship over a democracy because there's no such thing as expert knowledge. And there's no such thing as expert knowledge because there's no knowledge at all. Basic epistemology.
God damn it.
Oh, what say you to that?
Well, I'm not an expert. No one is.
Yeah, well, the problem, of course, with this line of reasoning is that it would require us to accept that there are no experts anywhere. There are no doctors. At least nobody worth being a doctor. I'm equally justified or equally qualified to be a doctor, and I'm equally qualified to be a I don't know. Pick your favorite craft. I'm equally qualified to be a carpenter as any other carpenter. And that's just too large a stretch of the imagination to accept. Because even if we accept the basic epistemological stance that nobody knows anything for certain, we have to concede that within the confines of our experience, some people get consistently better results than others. Doctors aren't infallible, but they sure do a hell of a lot better than I do at saving people, and I can see that.
I thought this was meant to be more rigid.
Well, it's a different kind of argument. I don't think the others. These are like direct defenses of democracy. Well, the other one was just minor details that you're uncomfortable with in Plato's accounts. This is more like arguments for democracy.
I thought we were meant to be not quite arguing for democracy next episode.
These are bad arguments intentionally. Let's just put it that way. Okay. Right. So we're strengthening our case, okay?
Okay.
So some people say that there are no experts at ruling.
Okay.
We've already pointed out that there are experts at ruling by listing the skills. By listing that we already previously listed the skills and the knowledge that you need to have in order to become a good ruler. And it's hard to argue against that. So clearly there are experts at ruling. So perhaps somebody thinks that the only way to rule for the people is with rule by the people. So they believe that a dictator can't come to know the interests of the people. Voting expresses the interests of the people, and that's exactly what legislation should be based on. It should be based on what the interests of the people are. So, and philosophy won't help this dictator come to know the interests of the people, so he can't possibly legislate in a manner that promotes the interests of the people. This is one argument.
Okay, that's an I'm getting I'm getting an interesting concept of like a dictator where like he gets votes in of like people's interests, but he still makes the decision himself.
Yes, you have a strong intuitive grasp of the arguments here, which is good. So first of all, opinion polling can be a much more sensitive way of finding the interests of the people, and this is because when you're voting for a law, there's a problem which is called mixed motivation voting. So there's a bit of confusion with how the word interest is used in that argument. Like, the voting reveals the interest of the people, and laws should be made according to the interest of the people. But the problem here is with the word interest. So voting might express someone's particular interest, his something that he desires that benefits himself, or it might express his opinion of what promotes the common good. They're two completely separate things. So whilst we'd say that that laws are supposed to promote the common good, we can't say that voting expresses the common good, because many people are voting according to their particular interest, according to what they want,
Right.
not according to what everybody should have, so to speak. So opinion polling that's strictly talking about what you want yourself, and maybe a different kind that's strictly talking about what you think would be right from like a more philosophical perspective, or common good political perspective, can be more efficient manners of discovering your opinions with regard to that. And then we have the dictator, who's an expert, make the actual ruling because he has a better chance of being right than you. So then we have to consider if voting can be adjusted to avoid mixed motivation voting. So perhaps ignoring the problem that even if we tell people to vote one way, they'd still greedily vote in favor of themselves, just pretending that everybody would in fact vote for the collective interest rather than their particular interest, can it be that democracy has an instrumental advantage over dictatorship in that people have a likelier chance of being right?
I mean,
this one's actually...
No, go ahead.
It depends on some assumptions, or it depends on one assumption in particular. So I'm just going to read this philosopher's name out for you, and you're just going to accept. Marie Jean Antoine Nicolas Caritat, the Marquis de Condorcet.
You want to try that again?
No. So I didn't even try to pronounce it in like some really professional French or whatever, because I know I'm going to get it wrong.
Wait, I'm gonna.
So
hold on. I think I can get this right. I just need to look it up. What was the first?
Just look up Nicolas Caritat. Nicolas. Nicholas. Caritat. Caritat.
Okay. Alright. Marie-Jeanne Antoine Nicolas de Caritat, Marquis of Condorcet.
Sure, I don't know.
Good enough.
That sounded way off, but what do I know? So this person which surprisingly was a he, which I didn't guess because the very first name was Marie, which surprised me. But devised a mathematical argument. Did you just call me? Wait,
No.
are you saying I'm sexist? Look, I'm sorry. I'm such a bigot. I assumed his gender based on his name. Wow.
Funny joke.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, but he devised a mathematical argument in favor of democracy. He said that in a large electorate where everyone has an over 50% chance of making the right decision, the chance of the correct one being made approaches certainty, which is just the nature of mathematics.
Right.
The larger the electorate, if each individual person has a greater than even chance of being correct, then with a really large electorate with like 10,000 people already, there's an almost certainty that they make the right choice.
Yep, Wikipedia did say he was a mathematician.
Yeah. Well, he was also a philosopher and mathematician. In fact, they made many more strides in mathematics than just this. But yes. So it's true, but the problem is that it's really unlikely. But we can't say that every single individual person has a greater than 50% chance. Like some people are going to be smarter than others, and we don't know which ones are going to have that above 50% chance. So the assumption is just really unlikely. The average individual has a greater than even chance of being correct, and that each individual must be motivated to vote according to their understanding of the common good rather than their particular interests. Those two assumptions are too much, and we have to admit that an expert making decisions has an instrumental advantage. And I'm using the word instrumental because that just means in terms of getting to the right decision. An expert does better than a democracy does. That's just how it is. And over the course of this video, we weren't really able to mount objections against Plato that were really sufficient, right?
Right.
So, well, okay. Well, I'll just ask what you think. Okay. So with Plato's description of philosopher king, and with the possible objections that we consider and our responses to them, does it seem that Plato's system of guardians, of a benevolent dictatorship where corruption is mitigated or outright prevented through other means, that this would just bring about a superior form of governance, with just the information that we have available, than a democracy, which we already made some objections against. We pointed out the rise of fascist dictators through democratic means. We pointed out populism and the power of rhetoric, and rather than actual expert knowledge, and how experts can tend to be ignored. Pointed out the possibilities of corruption with modern parliaments, and we pointed out many arguments within democracy itself that people still haven't been able to solve. And it doesn't seem that in a democratic system currently, we're actually making better decisions than, like, in terms of ruling the state. The state actually makes better decisions than we would with a single, or maybe if you want to stretch the imagination, 2 or 3 experts. I mean, I'm sure a council. Probably the philosopher king will make the decisions, but he'll still rely on the other philosophers who haven't yet taken their turn at ruling. I think that's probably a reasonable assumption to make. So, I mean, we can't expect one man to hold all the knowledge in every single field, but as a very intelligent expert at ruling, he knows what advice to take, rather than some leaders in the world that we have witnessed, like cough cough Trump.
Not biased.
Not biased. Well, I mean, some people. I mean, he made promises. Some people were like, "Oh, he's just saying," and then we suffered for
those
it.
things. Yeah, He's just look when he says build the wall, he means better infrastructure to handle immigrants coming across the border. He's like, no, I'm just gonna
Yeah.
build the wall. I mean that was literally like I'm paraphrasing a quote from Fox News that I saw.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, that's lovely. I'm glad Fox News themselves are like, no, he just means better
It doesn't actually
infrastructure.
mean that.
Yeah, I love that.
He means it.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, he means it.
He meant it.
Good. Yeah, I noticed. I
Yes.
noticed he meant it.
That's something we should talk about sometime. Like the promises people make during presidential candidacy.
Mm-hmm. I
Because
mean,
like
now's a
when
good time to talk about it.
I mean when was the last time any president actually fulfilled all the political promises they made during campaign?
Never? I don't know when they fulfilled all of them. They don't even have enough power to really fulfill them all of them.
Or even the majority of them, really.
Mm. I mean, they make so many promises that I don't think even they can keep track. Yeah, I don't.
Again,
And
it's
yet the cycle just repeats.
I mean, yeah,
Everybody
again, it's
gets.
just the strive for appeal rather than like
Yeah,
display of leadership.
yeah, and the more we paint the picture as one in which um the leaders are incompetent, the more we consider that democracy is instrumentally inferior to dictatorship.
Hmm.
Like so, like we can still oftentimes, especially with like Nicholas Caratat here, we can delude ourselves to some extent that it's possible that under some circumstances democracy can make better decisions, such as if we invest a great deal in the education of the individual, so we ensure that they have an above 50% chance of being correct, and rather than affording just the education to philosopher king, some people might say that this isn't a skill that can only be attained by the few. Ruling is it's something that should be taught to everyone, and everybody should learn the necessary skills to rule. I have to say that is the philosophy that we have in modern society, and it hasn't
Hmm.
worked.
It has not. No.
In schools, we do focus a fair bit on politics. I mean, I think we could focus more on it, and I think we should focus more. But
Hmm.
we do focus somewhat. We had at
Especially,
least a
yeah.
full year.
Especially here
We
in
had,
Finland.
especially here in Finland. I'm actually not sure about other countries. It might be a serious problem in the U.S. Education regarding government and politics.
Yeah, just like, what's it? What was the subject? Civil studies.
Yeah, civics. Civics
Civics.
was
Yeah.
good. Yeah, that was great. That was amazing. I don't remember much, but I remember I was taught some really fundamentals of economics and how banks work and how parties work that I do still remember and was definitely useful to me in furthest. So
Yeah, I feel like there definitely should be more of like a focus on education like that.
yeah. So, I mean, the fact of the matter is that everybody can't be made into an expert. Like, it sounds appealing. Like, okay, if we really, really focus on education, then everybody's going to get to that above 50% chance at least of
Hmm.
making the right decision. And at that point, we're going to be set, right? We're going to be better than Plato's
Yeah.
dictatorship.
It's yeah.
But
It's
that
just
point is far away because
exactly.
we're still at
It's
the point where people have to go to university before they even start understanding how politics work, and
yeah. Yeah.
for
I
purely practical reasons, everybody can't go to university to study politics.
Right. Yeah. Either we don't have the means for it yet, or we don't even have the political coherency for it yet to make
Hmm
such a system happen.
And again, an important problem is that the second assumption, which is that everybody needs to be motivated to vote according to the common good, rather than their own particular interests. Lobbying in the US, number one example, always.
Hmm.
Politics has some, especially in these serious capitalist societies, politics has some corruption inherent in it, and that's
Hmm.
just a. It's just, and that's another problem. That's another problem. People aren't going to make the decisions that are good for that are right for everyone if they're making the decisions that are right for themselves. Which you see all the time. People in the lower classes are way more likely to be leftist, and people in the upper classes are way more likely to be right. I'm not saying that that all of them are definitely just being biased, but considering just the huge percentages, you sort of make the assumption there's just bias going on.
Yeah, I mean, it's just conservatism versus liberalism. I mean, it's age old.
It's age old. There's the lower classes versus the upper classes is the fundamental tension of politics, the entirety of history. So I don't know if conservatism and liberalism is the perfect way of expressing that, but of course, because generally the words might, like in if we have a very liberal government, then conservatism might be the same thing as liberalism,
Right,
just
true, of
due to
course.
its definition. So, but yeah, generally speaking, because of the way history has progressed, conservatives tend to be the really right wing one.
Yeah, exactly.
Although
I was referring back to how it was in history. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Though I would qualify that many, especially like in the US, large number of conservatives are very much economic liberals or classical liberals. You need to liberalism is a complicated topic, and the modern left is more social liberal. But yeah. So maybe not the perfect terminology, but I get what you're saying. Like essentially, that is the primary conflict in politics, and in a democracy in which we have significant class differences, people voting according to their own preferences is always going to be a problem. Even if they think that their own opinion is actually the objectively right one, there are going to be underlying biases there that they're not accounting for. Like, that's just going to be a problem. I mean, you can't look at the percentages. I don't know what the percentages are, but you just have to look at your friends and family. It's going to be something ridiculous, like 80% or more of people in the upper class lean right, and 80% or more of people in the lower classes lean left or something. It's just ridiculous percentages. How can you say that people have an above 50% chance of making the right decision in that event?
Right.
Because it can't be that both these groups are right. So, or maybe it could be, but just in different ways. No. They were both groups can't be completely correct.
They can't be completely correct. Yeah,
both of them. I'm a radical centrist, and I think both of them have a part of the truth.
Look, these Nazis, just as good.
Maybe we'll stray away from that one. But yeah, but Eric, so you know, here I think is a question that I think is a good way to finish off with. I would say you probably like democracy still. You probably wouldn't like a dictator.
I'm a fan,
yes. So I'm going to ask you, what do you value in democracy?
That's right. I don't think I have an answer with enough nuance for that yet.
Right. Well,
I guess you're just gonna have to find out. I guess you're just gonna have to find out in the next episode.
I guess so. Yeah. Here is the central point. So, democracy might have intrinsic value. It might be that it has, and I don't. Intuitively, I don't like talking about intrinsic value because I always feel like intrinsic value is all. But still, democracy, even if it has an instrumental disadvantage in terms of finding the correct and most optimal way of ruling a state, form of government, so to speak, and it might be that it's just like almost there, like it's quite good, and then it's the rest of the way, the advantage is given to it not for instrumental reasons, but for intrinsic reasons. We value democracy because we value freedom and equality and whatever, right?
Right.
So if you very strongly value equality and freedom in the sense of voting is an expression of us all being free in the sense that we get to rule ourselves, and us all being equal in the sense that we all get the same vote, and you really value those virtues, then that might be good enough for you as person to prefer democracy. I don't know if you can ever say that that's objectively true, but it's a possible route one can take.
I feel like another reason democracy is such an appealing thing is how many examples of good dictators do you really have?
Yeah, in practice it doesn't tend to happen, probably because of corruption, really, primarily. I'm sure if we dig back in history, we can find some pretty good leaders that everybody was really happy with.
Right.
But,
yeah, it's just that, like, in the current climate, if you wanted to become a dictator, if you took the steps to become a dictator, it would be malicious inherently.
Hey guys, just make me a dictator. Look, I promise, I'll give up all my private possessions.
Guys, please. Look, I'm just saying we should abolish the term limit.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
And voting.
And voting. Yeah, it's minor side note.
Just tack it on to the back of the bill.
How about we just, instead of abolishing the term limit, how about we abolish the term expiry? Right? So it's like, you elect me once, you elect me forever. And then also we abolish the election, so it's just me forever. Yeah, it's gonna be really tough if you. It could well be that at this point we go, hey, you know what? Dictatorship, Plato's system, is way better, but we can't practically institute it anymore. Like, it's too late for that. That could also be an issue. It's just pragmatically impossible. The people will never accept as legitimate a dictator once they've had democracy or something. Who knows? But I think we've made a strong case.
I feel like
it's a way tougher question than people give it credit for. Like, we talked at the beginning about how people assume democracy is good. People don't give enough credit to the idea of a benevolent dictator, an enlightened like many will go, yeah, I like it in theory, but it's completely impossible in practice. And that person I respect. I know some of them. Others just never even think about. They like politics, but they don't think about such deep political philosophy. They don't go to the point they don't get to the point of questioning democracy. They're too busy thinking about policies and the right and the left and taxes and whatever.
Yeah,
there is
plebeian things.
Yeah, the economy.
Plebeian concerns like livelihood.
Yeah, see, we're intelligent because we actually question the fundamentals, okay?
Not very productively, but...
Don't take me seriously on that. Also, we're talking to an audience of potentially 30 people. 30 people whose viewer retention is probably like 5 minutes, so...
Yeah.
Not the most productive way of expressing these opinions.
We are being incredibly productive right now for society. We're basically changing things already. This is the paradigm shift. Roll credits.
Roll credits. But in seriousness, I said that this time we'd be critiquing democracy and next time we'd be defending. It's a bit blurrier than that. It's more like this is part 1 and next time is part 2. It's not strictly a critique, defend. It's more of a, here we end with the sort of idea that a dictatorship could have its benefits, and next time we'll go through the final and most convincing argument. Like, I know I said we'd be arguing for dictatorship this time, but it really was more of a cooperative, argumentative, like looking at both sides, because I'm not into the whole rhetorical, make a long speech to convince people of your case thing. That's not intellectually honest.
Right.
So I wasn't really aiming for let's just whack democracy on the head repeatedly, and then next time pull a 180. I more meant that we'll see that we'll consider them a specific program of dictatorship, specific Plato's, and then we're going to see that this holds a fair bit of water.
Exactly. It's here's why this alternative view might be reasonable.
Yeah, nobody's gonna buy it anyway if we don't look at the arguments again. But next time, I don't even know if we're gonna come to the conclusion that democracy is the best. Although I have a strong suspicion that we will because of biases and possibly the leanings of the author of this book. Possibly, I don't know. I really hope that democracy turns out to be the logical choice. Because even though I've been a critic for a while, like in the past as well, I've always thought about, man, democracy is dumb. It's ruling as a skill. Why are the rabble being convinced by these populists? But of course, there's a lot more going on.
I truly hope that the solution we come to, the logical conclusion is Hitler good.
Yeah. I feel like we've ended another episode like this as well. Just Hitler good.
Hitler good. I feel like this is a common theme with us.
Well, then we have to keep it going. It's like a good joke. Okay.
Good joke. It's a good running gag.
It's a good
Hitler
joke.
good.
So...
I like that actually. It's like a lot of people have their bits, the things they refer back to when they're trying to make a point. Ours is like Hitler good. So basically, Hitler good.
Yeah, that would be fun. So yeah, so you know what? Thank you everybody who's made it this far. Hopefully somebody wants to watch all this.
Whether now or in
I'm
the
still
future.
waiting for comments. Leave a comment if you made it this far. I'm still waiting. We didn't get any comments last time we said leave a comment.
If you made it to this point, comment Hitler good in the comments. And you'll get a $500 gift card from me, personally from me. Giveaway, legal giveaway, verbal contract right here, legal giveaway. Certifiable. Certified by the Office of Certification.
Sounds like a legit office. Yeah. With that, thank you everyone, and remember, Hitler good.
Hitler good.